y'all, welcome and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Morgan, and here we do all things creepy, whether that be me telling you guys some scary stories, looking at some paranormal caught on camera videos, talking about folklore and all that stuff. It is a fun time if I do say so myself, and if that sounds cool, I would love to have you. I do post terrifying content daily, so I do promise you'll get sick of me, but I am here. Please check out the description below for social media links, podcast episodes, and where to send in your stories. And now that we got all that out of the way, let's read some stories. Today I have a long message for you. I need help. Me and my mother have been experiencing some stuff lately, not good stuff. I started noticing it a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know how long my mother started noticing it ago, but it doesn't seem to be able to enter her house. It's very clearly there though. I live in Ohio, and I first noticed it when I saw lights through my living room window. They were headlights that pulled into my neighbor's driveway, but they never left. I looked out the window fully to wave, only to see no cars, although I never saw or heard the car leave, which, due to the setup, I would have. My dad, who was sitting next to me, did not see it, but my mother did. Note, I still live with my parents. We never heard sounds outside, and we never looked to see what it is, never. Today, February 5th, my mom was sitting in her car after dark at around 5:30 p.m. after getting home from work. She said she saw a shadow person. She didn't specify where. Later tonight, I see a tall, black, hunched-over figure by my chicken coop in my backyard. The setup is, I walk into my laundry room to get a trash bag, and we have a big window facing the backyard. I see it, look away in the blink of an eye, and jog to my mom and tell her it's an emergency. And I tell her what I saw. She got me the trash bag and told me about the shadow person that she saw. The energy with this thing that I saw was horrible, absolutely gut-wrenching. I've never felt anything like that, and the second time I was looking at it. I watch your videos often, so I always look away when I see it and walk away. I want to clarify, both me and my mom are spiritual, my mom more than me. She's going to cleanse my chicken coop and the house with rosemary. I have protection spells on me at all times and around my windows and in my room. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day. So the protection's probably the biggest reason that nothing's really happened inside the house, so that's good. I do think cleansing's really good. You sent this a while ago, so I do hope everything cleared up. Yeah. The thing with shadow people, I always say they're usually benign. Sometimes they do have malicious intent, and those shouldn't be left around. You know what I mean? All right, next story. A few years ago, I was dating a guy who lived on the other side of my neighborhood, right next to the 120-year-old mental institution. It's good now, but boy, is the history dark. So that to say, my whole neighborhood has this weird energy to it. But this guy lived next to the hospital in a house that 2 people had previously passed in. Apparently, when his parents moved in, they used one of their past owner's pictures frames for a while until one day they all violently flew to the ground. A few other things would happen from time to time, but it was apparently pretty chill until my ex moved into the bedroom in the basement. One of the previous owners had passed in that room. Multiple times while we were hanging out, he would wince or yelp and move his clothes only to find 3 angry red scratches. They'd always disappear fast though. Apparently they would sear like burns. This room had plush carpets, and one of his dresser drawers was almost impossible to pull out because it was jammed into the carpet. It took almost all of my strength to open this drawer, but he closed it every night, and most mornings he woke up to it being pulled out at least halfway. I think a lot about that night. I specifically closed the drawer, slept in the loft right directly above that said drawer, and then woke up with the drawers pulled out. Ugh. After a while, he got into witchy stuff and found that strategic crystal sigils and daily sage burnings would keep it at bay. Missing even one day would result in voices, bed shaking, scratches, and other really not so fun stuff. At one point, I was accompanying him to a little ritual, but I'm a world-class klutz and ended up dropping the paper into the fire before the protective parts of the circle had been put up. I found some really weird pictures I didn't take on my phone later, right after. We live where the tall things that shan't be named roam. There have been some very unsettling moments where we realized trees were not really trees or something of that like. We just locked the doors and closed the blinds. A lot of weird stuff happens here. I have this thing in my house that takes my things and only gives them back if I ask nicely. It got all worried during the pandemic and started yanking my door open a couple of weeks into isolation because it was pissed that it wasn't getting alone time. I had to explain that the pandemic was happening and started spending time out of my room because I figured it deserved quiet time too. I don't exactly know what this thing is, but we're on good terms. I think it might be someone from the old institution because the whole area used to be owned by the hospital. I'm fairly certain it's a he, but that's as much as I really know. It could just be the house spirits for all I'm certain, but it's active. To be fair, that really does sound house spirit-esque. A lot of that does. But house spirits aren't, unless you're like disrespecting the home, that's probably a bunch of different things, because unless you're like hurting the home or something, they don't really do anything negative. But it could be a few different things in there. All right, next story. When I was younger, I was hanging out with a friend without my parents at home. We had our phones out and suddenly we hear it ring. The number that was calling was home, aka our house phone. I answered it, and I don't remember that part anymore. Heard a hello. Well, either way, we heard something. We hung up because we realized that no one should be able to call us from that number. Then we searched the house. I thought it could be an intruder playing with us or something, but no one was there. Weird stuff happens with house phones all the time. I always hear like the creepiest stories. But I think watching, what was that thing, When a Stranger Calls, like traumatized me. It's like the call's coming from inside the house. It's like, thank you, I'm gonna have a heart attack now. You okay? Yeah? Okay. This is Pyrrha, by the way. I don't know if you guys have seen her on camera. She looks a lot like Pete, but Pete's a tortoiseshell cat and she's calico because she has white belly and white feet. I have a couple stories from when I was working and bagging someone's groceries. I smelled a very strong smell of roast beef and asked the customer if they were buying roast beef, but they weren't. My grandpa loved roast beef sandwiches, so that was more than likely him. Another story from a few years ago when I was working at a flower shop, I would feel like someone was behind me even though no one was physically near me. It was my aunt saying hi to me while I was having lunch, of course. Those are wholesome. Alright, next story. One of your videos reminded me of my own home since I moved here. I've seen things, many things in my home, but one of them just won't leave me alone. It's a tall figure with red eyes who roams my halls when I'm alone or at night. None of my family sees it, but it'll threaten me without them knowing. I've wanted to stage the home forever, but I can't because my family would get mad at me. Sometimes it'll talk to me in my dad's voice or even my mom's. I don't answer it when it talks my mom's voice because my mother has been dead for years. It also turns on and off lights in my home and moves things. I've started to avoid it, but I think that just makes it mad. Could I have some advice of sorts? So I don't like the fact that if your mom has been dead for years, it's using her voice because it had to learn her voice. If it's what I'm thinking it is, which means it's been there for a while just plotting, and I don't like that. That sounds like it could be a mimic to me, and ignoring it is going to be your best bet. The only way I got rid of mine was a cord cutting ritual, and if your family's not going to be okay with you even cleansing, I don't know if they're going to be okay with that. If you see this, let me know if you're still having experiences and we will figure out something to do. All right, next story. This is a true story. In fact, it's my own. I don't know if you believe in only specific parts of the paranormal, but I've been following you for a while and I believe this is the email used to contact you for stories. So here's mine. Back in 2021, before I started being a spiritual person and believing in the paranormal, I felt that something was missing from my life. When I finally found spirituality, it was like the universe unlocked everything for me. Unfortunately, that included the bad things as well. As a newly practicing witchcraft and spirituality person, I was a bit scared but also excited by everything I learned. Even if I didn't have money for ingredients or if I lived in a non-supportive household, you may be asking, that's all nice, but where's the bad part? My life had slowly shifted while I got more and more into spiritual occult stuff. One day I started not being able to sleep at night. I'm not talking insomnia, as I was always able to sleep before. I'm not talking about boredom or too much energy. I literally couldn't sleep even if I wanted to because I felt scared. I was confused because I knew there was nothing to be scared of. It was like something decided to put the fear inside of me because I had none of my own. Then, when morning came, I would decide to investigate by using divination. I asked what kind of entity it was, if it was malevolent, etc., and the answers were scary. It was everything I didn't want it to be. After questioning the hell out of this whole ordeal by using tarot cards, I found that this spirit's motives was to stop me from sleeping, although it only halfway succeeded. At night, I could not sleep at all until I finally literally passed out. Anytime I closed my eyes, it would show me images of things that freaked me out. During the day, I would only sleep for a little bit before I was interrupted or woken up by something, like I was being shaken up by a spirit. Finally, I decided to stand up for myself and do a banishing spell on the spirit. Now, I don't really like sharing the ways that I do things on here because people can break spells or workings if they know how they're done. So I let my ritual do its thing, and finally everything seemed fine. I checked with divination. Did I successfully banish the malevolent spirit? Yes. Did someone send the spirit to me? Yes. That shocked me, and I was pacing around wondering who it could be. One of my witchy friends was a traitor, I thought, but no. Somehow I felt some knowledge being gifted to me, like another spirit had told me what to ask. So I asked, did my guardian angel or spirit guide send the spirit to me as a test? The answer was yes. The reasoning for this was, as a witchcraft practicing person, I ramble about my findings to my angels a lot. They finally decided to test me to see if I could actually practice what I preach. Do things in more than a theory, banish entities. I'm assuming that if I wasn't able to do it, I could ask for help and they would have stepped in, of course. I passed the test though, and I'm happy I did. Still kind of butthurt that they sent me this test and didn't really fully make me aware beforehand, but I assume they did it so that they could see if I could tell when something around me was good or bad. That's terrifying. I would get my feelings so hurt. I'm just gonna kind of like chat for a second. Something that's not really talked about a lot when it comes to getting into crafts, the craft and things like that, is if you don't set up protections first, which a lot of people don't, you open yourself up to getting things. And I know it's not what happened here, I'm just chatting. Whenever I started into witchcraft, I didn't set up protections first. I went into like other rituals and I let in some stuff. So it is so important to set up protections first. But anyways, that is all for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye. The Sensabaugh Tunnel in Kingsport, Tennessee is one of the most haunted places in the world, and I stand by that. I have never went there and not had a horrifying experience. I've told you guys about so many. But regardless, one of my favorite content creators on here, and probably one of your all's favorites, Dustin, went there and sent me the story. And also, I'm gonna need you guys to tag him in the comments because I'm currently begging him to go back to the tunnel with me. We need to make it happen. I'll film it all. We'll both film it all. But we need to make it happen. So please tag him below and let's read this story. I need you to listen carefully when I tell you this. Don't ever go to the Sensabaugh Tunnel. I know we've done some dumb stuff, but this was different. This wasn't just a spooky story that our minds were playing tricks on us. Something was there that night. It was me, Justin, Hayden, and Jesse. We were just looking for a thrill, something to make our hearts race. Typical late-night dumbassery. The Sensabaugh Tunnel has been on our list for a while. Everyone in Kingsport, Tennessee knows the stories. The whispers people hear, the shadows that move when there's no one there to cast them. Some say that you can hear screams if you sit in the dark long enough. Others say that if you turn off your car inside the tunnel, it won't start again. We thought that was bullshit. We weren't laughing by the time we left, though. When we got there, the road leading to the tunnel was eerily empty. Not a single car, no distant headlights, just the four of us, the thick smell of damp earth, and that tunnel. A black void carved into the hillside. Our headlights barely cut through the darkness inside. The walls were cracked and slick with moisture, water dripping somewhere deep in the shadows. The trees above swayed, and there was no wind. For some reason, Hayden and Jesse decided that they wanted to walk through the tunnel. Maybe they thought it would be funny. Maybe they wanted to prove they weren't scared. Me and Justin, we weren't about that. We turned the car around and kept the engine running, headlights aimed at the entrance in case we needed to leave fast. That turned out to be the smartest thing we did. Hayden and Jesse walked in, their phone lights cutting weak beams through the thick darkness. At first, everything was normal, the crunch of gravel under their shoes, their muffled voices echoing against the tunnel walls. They were halfway through when they stopped talking. Then everything goes silent. Not just quiet, silent, like the whole world had been muted. No crickets, no breeze, nothing. Even the usual distant hum of the town was gone. Then they heard it. The whispers. It seemed to move, shifting from one side of the tunnel to the other. Hayden's voice came through the walkie-talkie app we were using. "Did you say something?" Justin and I looked at each other. We hadn't. Another whisper, this time closer. Jesse cursed under his breath. "Dude, someone's in here." Then came the footsteps. Soft at first, like someone taking cautious steps through the darkness. But they weren't coming from Hayden or Jesse. They were coming from deeper inside the tunnel. Then they moved. 1 second, they were behind them. The next, they were ahead, circling. Jesse screamed. I reached over and slammed my hand on the horn, trying to break whatever the hell was happening. Hayden and Jesse came sprinting out of that tunnel, eyes wide, faces pale. They dove into the car, gasping. "Go!" they shouted. We should have, but we didn't. We were all shaking, trying to make sense of what just happened. That's when Justin said, "Let's listen for a second." I don't know why we thought that was a good idea. We parked just outside of that tunnel, windows rolled down, the air was thick, almost suffocating. Trees loomed above us, their branches twisting into black veins against the sky. And then we heard it. Running. Something sprinting up to the car. It was fast. Too fast. The footsteps pounded against the pavement, coming straight from my open window. My breath caught in my throat, and for a split second, I thought I saw something move in the darkness. A shape, too tall, too thin, its limbs jerking unnaturally as it charged. Then, just as it reached us, it stopped. I couldn't breathe. Then the footsteps ran back into the tunnel. We didn't wait to see what it was. Justin floored it, tires kicking up gravel as we tore away from that place. None of us spoke the entire way home. Because deep down, we all knew something had been out there. We tried to rationalize it later. Maybe it was an animal. Maybe the acoustics in the tunnel made our own footsteps sound strange. But Morgan, what kind of animal whispers? What kind of trick of sound makes footsteps circle you, makes something run toward you and then vanish? I don't know what we encountered that night, but I do know this. I'm never going back to the Sensabaugh Tunnel. And if you ever think about it, don't go alone. Okay, but hear me out, Dustin. What if you went with me? Well, what if we both went? I know I've had a scary experience every time I went. I know that's not my best pitching point to you, but what if we went? as always, 10 out of 10 storytelling. I've talked about my experiences with that tunnel on here so often, but did you know, I'm talking to you guys and Dustin, there's actually 2 tunnels. You were talking about the drive-through one, I assume, right? There's actually a small one that you walk through that's technically on private property now. I don't know if you can still walk through it. I have, but that one, some say, is actually the haunted one, like the one where someone was actually, no one really knows. It's all like a bunch of stories, but I can take you to the little one. What do you say? Guys, tag Dustin. We got to make this happen.